Alrighty then, so let's start with just making a quick basic shader and then we'll get into some more stuff. So materials, just going to go into here, my materials folder, right click, and I'm going to create a brand new material. And let's just call this one, this first one, test mat for test material. You notice the little star, that means it's not saved. So if I say save all, save selected, it goes away, the little asterisk, and that means it's saved. So now I'm going to double click on there. All right. These are the inputs for this material. Right now there's nothing inside of it. Let's just take a quick look. So just real fast, and if you've gone over this, then we can speed up. You can fast forward a little bit, but really quick. I'm just going to kind of glaze over this interface and just some of these options and what they are. So this obviously is a representation of your material. You can either use these default primitives. If you have a mesh that's actually already imported in and you have it selected in the content browser, you can actually click here and it brings it in. So you could try it out on the actual model that you're intending to apply it to. I wouldn't do it for really large things by any means or really complicated things, but it works out really well for something simpler. Physical material. This is where you would actually make what's literally called a physical material. What this is basically a material a different type of material you would assign to this visual shader material. And if you've ever wondered, oh, well, when I'm walking in this video game on snow, I can hear this, my footsteps going into the snow, and then when I walk, I'm in a space station or something, and I'm running on metal, and I can hear this clank, 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 or maybe other properties that would be associated with it. That's where the physical material comes in and does a lot of other things as well, but um, it's essentially assigned to wherever this material is. So in the case of the snow, wherever you'd walk or interface with snow, certain things would happen. The bullets would shoot out when they would hit. They would shoot out snow. When you walk on it, it would make sort of a sort of sound, and that would be the difference. That's what a physical material is. Material domain is what basic attributes are assigned to it. Is this a surface? Deferred decal we'll talk about. Light function, which is essentially a material that you would put inside of a light. So you can animate a light flickering or doing things like that. A post-process material or a user interface material. The blend mode, how is it blending? This is based off of how you plan on using this material. Is it opaque, meaning entirely solid? Is it masked? That would be something that you would use for, let's say, leaves, because you'd want to use an alpha channel that's going to hide them. Would it be translucent, additive, modulate? These are all different things based off of what type of material you're going to use. Some of these are grayed out because this is grayed out. So in other words, if I actually change some of these settings, you might see some of these different things highlight and turn off and on depending on that. I'm just going to leave you at opaque. This, if I had switched it to decal, then it's going to start to change this. What kind of shading model? This is basically different properties of the material that are kind of put into it, and it gives you a head start, would be the easiest way of saying it. You could build whatever you want inside of some of these, but this puts you in the right direction. So in other words, default lit means that it's being properly lit by the environment. Subsurface scattering is like, well, we'll talk more about that, but And if you read this week's information, there's a little bit in there, and I'm going to post up some stuff. Um, Pre-integrated skin and subsurface scattering are different things that you would actually use for skin. Clear coat would be like that acrylic you see on a car. A subsurface profile would be other materials that would use subsurface scattering. We'll talk more about what that is. Is it a two-sided material? In other words, can we see both sides of a flat polygonal surface? We have to turn that on in the material by default. In the game engine, you won't. Hair, cloth, eyes, these all give you like these little starting points and extra features so that you don't have to work as hard to get it. You still got to work though. Translucency, how much that's light passing through a surface, and a lot of its properties, and how do you plan on using it in a mesh, in a particle system, in a light, is it creating distortion? Is it going to be used on cloth? So that you can see there's just a lot of different features inside of here. Of course, the palette is all the things that you can put into it, but you can also access that by right-clicking and basically choosing what nodes you'd like to put in. Just like you can just start to type in different things to try and find what it is you want to bring in. Let me put this back to a sphere. And then, of course, we have the different inputs for that material. Okay. Last, real quick, I didn't mention, I can show stats and FPS. You have to have a seriously, ridiculously beefy material for you just to turn on show FPS and show the material here and see a hit of one single material. That thing is just, that's not a good thing. So, find in CB, that means find in the content browser, apply changes you've made, find different things you're looking for, goes home to the canvas. Cleanup means when I have a whole bunch of nodes in here and I am not using, they're not connected, cleanup deletes the ones that are not connected to the material itself. Connections, show or hide the connections of them. Live preview, so if this is animated like a flickering light or something, with live preview I'll see it flickering. Live nodes shows me where it's going. Live update to the engine. Stats and mobile stats. How is it affecting if this is in a mobile game? Now, if it looks like I'm like, oh my god, he blasted through that, I'll never remember that, that's okay. You have other resources, I'm just kind of glazing over this really fast so we can get to the good stuff and then we could talk about it later. But this is just interface stuff. You don't have to memorize everything. You basically build a material based off of what you want. So a super basic material is using the color, the base color, and basically inside of these nodes you can either put values, colors, or textures, and sometimes, and also as well as a whole bunch of other utility nodes or different types of nodes you can put in. So let's just put in a color. I'm gonna hold down the number 3 and left mouse click, and this puts in a constant vector 3, which basically means it's a color. I can choose a color for this. And hit OK. And then when I apply it to the base color, give it a second, it's going to switch to that. And then I can always go in and say, wow, that's a little too pink. I want it more red, maybe a little less magenta. And this is showing my new color what it was, and when I hit OK, it'll update and write it to that. This is a vector, a constant vector 3. 3 meaning that there are 3 inputs, red, green, and blue. Some of these others are basically, for right now I'm just going to talk about um, metallic and roughness. You can also just drag out and then type in what you want. So if I just start typing in, oh, there's a constant vector 3 right there. Bing. Or if I say, wow, for that one, I don't really need that. I want just say metallic. And I'm just going to type in constant. That means it's just one value. And if I increase it, we see how it changes that shade. Okay. If I lower it, oops, didn't want to go to a negative. And I, of course, can type in. This is at a 0. The metallic really just goes from 0 to 1. Anything beyond that isn't going to do that much. It's just literally 0 to 1. And you can see this looks right now like a very nice kind of satiny sort of look. What happens, let me duplicate this. Copy, paste. And hook you up into the roughness. Now it's really rough, which basically means this is a non-reflective surface. If I change this to a 0, it becomes a very, very, very reflective surface. So what we see is the roughness, in short, is defining the imperfections of this surface. 0 means it is ridiculously smooth, therefore it can really reflect a surface. 1 means it's rougher, and therefore it's not going to reflect it. It's more of a matte surface. And then the metallic is its basic properties of how much like a metal shininess there is. See that? It's through these guys that we start to get into what kind of metal or chrome or things like that we actually have. And of course, the normal map itself is where I can plug in a normal map. Let's just see if we go, we'll pull this aside just for a second. And if we did go into our startup content under textures, we have a pretty decent amount of textures and materials, and you can see them in here where there's, oh, like a stone. We have the normal map, which is that you'll notice the normal maps always have this weird sort of red, bluey kind of look to it. So if I go in, and let's just take a look at these. I'm just going to take this, pull this in here. And how I get them in is I just literally drag them in. This is where having dual monitors works really well, but then you wouldn't be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm just going to take 2 of these just so you can see. I'm just going to pull them in. They aren't connected, but I'm going to put the texture into the base color. We can see how weird that is with these. Let's disconnect them. Hold down Alt, left mouse click to disconnect. So it's not quite as ridiculously shiny, but that doesn't look that great. And then we plug in the normal map. Let's put you back to a cube. And that is with the normal map. Nothing else. Normal map and the image. And we already have a pretty nice look to it. Just left mouse dragging those. So we can see that looks pretty good. Not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but definitely better. It's just it's too slick and glossy everywhere. And that's where we would get into utilizing sometimes these different channels for different things. Like this is the red channel, the green, and the blue of this image. And just by that subtle change, I pulled the red channel in to the specular. And what it's doing is based on the values, it's making the stones more shiny than the dirt. So that's how you plug in different pieces. And what we're going to do in our next one is we're going to go over a little more detail of pulling these in, making a material, and even how to tile it.